Ready to level up? Chumba Casino is your playbook to fun. It's free to play with no purchase necessary. Enjoy hundreds of casino-style games like bingo, slots, and solitaire anytime, anywhere with fresh releases every week. Whether you're at home or on the go, let Chumba Casino bring the excitement to you. Plus, get free daily login bonuses and a free welcome bonus. Join now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Play Chumba Casino today. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. T&Cs apply.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today, we have a real full circle moment, which I'll explain a little bit later, with just an awesome human, Trey Ratcliff. He is a pioneering photographer and artist celebrated for his work in high dynamic range, otherwise known as HDR photography. He's the founder of StuckInCustoms.com, which was the website that started my day for years, actually, just looking for that daily photograph. This is going back some time. It's the world's premier travel photography blog where he shares his captivating images and stories from around the globe. Through his photography and creative endeavors, Trey aims to promote mindfulness and consciousness, inspiring millions of followers across various platforms. Recently, he's ventured into writing with his personal and spiritual memoir, Soul's Compass, an Awakening Odyssey Beyond Earth, which explores profound experiences in spirituality and the nature of reality, marking a new chapter in his creative journey, which is also what brought me back to Trey's work. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that about half of what you said was true. No, I'm just kidding. With everything, I go into it with full humility and just here to serve and like try to create sometimes. And even when I do make a good creation, oftentimes I don't even feel like it's me. I'm just kind of channeling the universe or just very aware and stuff like that. And yeah, I think we're all in this thing together, and that's kind of always been my raison d'etre, my modus operandi is that, we all appear to be different people, but we're all part of this beautiful superorganism. And the way we get to know each other is through sharing our creations, because every creation is like a little light shard from your soul. And people can see truth and beauty almost instantly, sometimes at a subconscious level.
Well, this makes total sense the way that you're speaking right now. And it I've heard some of this language over the years since I've at least known your work, but just going through your latest book, makes even more sense. And it feels like I'm like connecting dots, but just to give some context to the listeners, even photography wasn't, it's not like you grew up just holding the camera and like that was the destined path. Even though I know, with your eye, are you still blind in
Yeah, my
one
right
eye?
eye, blackout black.
You're black, yeah. And I just remember with photography, I think you used to joke, it was like made for the camera, obviously, right, to see through the viewfinder. But where did it all start? Because I think you have a science and computer science kind of background, then photography kind of came in, and now it seems like everything's weaving together in a wild way.
Yes, I was traditionally a man of science, a real skeptic, an absolute hardcore devout atheist. Uh, at
Yeah.
university, I focused on computer science, geophysics, and math. And then that was I had sort of an IT life for about the first half of my life. And then in my mid 30s, I got my first camera. And I never taken a photography class or read a book about photography. And I'm the kind of person that eschews traditional education. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
it. I know a lot of people go through that process and people learn different ways, but I like to be self-taught. That's just, I rebuild things from the foundation. And no, I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to jump too far forward here, but it was the same way with spirituality when I started having psychedelic experiences, then when I had my near-death experience, and I would have to build this up from the ground level rather than go to a church and adopt a set of rules, right, that you need to follow or you go
Mm.
to hell. which doesn't exist, by the way.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with people that want to go and just like listen to someone else's rules. Maybe some of the rules are a little squirrely, just like with photography. Some of the rules could be a little
Yeah.
squirrely, you know? I look at now that I'm fully in the milieu of photography, I do look at how other people are taught, or I look at how other people teach.
Yeah.
And I think, some of that stuff may not be true. All these rules, which are, just made up by somebody else, and you can make your own rules. And I think that's why I encountered such resistance when I started publishing my HDR photography, especially.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember the comment, the hate. It was like, "What? This is not real." And then now we have iPhones that have literally HDR
Yeah.
settings.
Well, in fact, it's not, they used to
Right.
have, they still have HDR settings, but now it's just built into the output.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all because people love it. And I was like, well, my audience isn't other photographers. My audience is, everybody else who enjoys photography.
Yeah.
And when I got into it when I was 35, right now I'm a tender 53.7. And um, I got into it at the digital age, right? Just when digital was coming online. So I was, online, and Flickr was the only thing around back then, right? This is before Facebook, all
Oh,
that
yeah.
jazz, even before Twitter. And there were a lot of old school photographers who were film, and they just didn't want to go to digital, right? Those really kind of, and there's nothing wrong with film. Film is great, but there are a few curmudgeons
Yeah.
out there. I call them like the creepy uncles. And there's like creepy uncle curmudgeon photography guy. Where like they're just angry all the time. And so even digital to them is a bit of like, you know, a crucifix to the vampire, much less post
Yeah.
processing, right? Photoshop was the devil, especially doing any HDR. Like, so they're like, if you're a real photographer, you get it right in camera. So anyway, so I started getting lots of hate early on, and I really like to understand other minds, and I'm quite an empathetic person. I'm like, what are their actual arguments? Are they logical? Are they rational? Are they emotional? Are they egotistic? Have they
Mhm.
Are they clinging to their own identity? Because that's what defines them. So they have to go out and fight for their identity. You can see that online. You pick a group,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it's a religious group or government group or whatever. People cling so strongly to their bullet points of identities, and they have to go
Yeah.
to defend them all the time. But that's really just your ego out there, just trying to protect yourself, and you see it in all walks of life. So it's been interesting for me to watch these behavior patterns as I move from one group to another, and it
Mhm.
creates a sense of separation, which and division, which is not good. I think we're moving into like a new awakening, and
Yeah.
where
The
there
new
is no
world.
division, and we can all be harmonious and full of love and full of anger and fear at the other group. And the people that stick with anger and fear, they're not gonna make it. And they're not gonna make it to this, like,
Yeah.
new evolved Earth, and not to get too deep into spirituality right now, but I can see this separation happening, when really we're just
Yeah.
here to love and, create harmony and help other people. It's just that easy. People make life a little too complex and invite a little too much drama and conflict into their sensorium, and it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. So, but how if you go back to even the photography years where you were experimenting with this new well, basically creating this new technique, frankly, and then, partnering and so forth and creating software and just because I know you're a humble person, just for perspectives. I mean, I know some of this stuff, but most people listening probably won't know this. I mean, when we're talking about some of your photographs, at least the last I checked, there's something like 140 billion views on Google with some of these images, and, I mean, you've sold fine art photography to people like Edward Norton, Leonardo DiCaprio, and many others. So this is I don't wanna label it or put any kind of I mean, but, your stuff has been seen, let's just say. Um, but in the early days, like, how did you keep going and just did you just know inside you or didn't care? Like, this is what I meant to do. I'm gonna follow this path. Because a lot of people would just be like this, they'd give up or they'd switch, right?
Yes. Well, I'm a I'm a lifelong gamer. I still play games, and I think that the entire earth is a bit of a game, and we're all actors on a stage,
Okay.
just like Shakespeare said. Come down here to play certain roles, and I'm a min max kind of guy, and I'm like, how can we just have fun down here and create and share? And I look at my kids. I know you have a 2 and 8 year old, and at any age you watch kids, which I think is really the natural state of humans before we become
Yeah.
teenage.
Before we screw it
Right.
up.
We become so serious, you know,
Yeah.
create some identity or whatever. But kids, they just create and they share. Like you'll see your kids, they'll make something on construction paper and use glitter glue or whatever, and then they'll run around the house and show everybody. They're really excited. And then they'll show other kids how they
Yeah.
did it. This is a natural way of being. So when I really got
So
sorry,
true.
what's that?
I just it's so
Yeah,
true. It's so we overlook that though.
right. And then photography is one of those old school, like the Masons or something, where you have your trade secrets. You don't tell anybody, and you have to go to a brick and mortar building to unlock the trade secrets from these great masters. So, which is ridiculous, of course. And so, when I got
Yeah.
into HDR photography, I started trying all different kinds of tools, and I made a free tutorial I put on the website. And I started, so I did all these grievous sins in the world of photography. One, I would share
Mhm.
all my photos full res without a watermark.
Yeah. Yeah, I
People are
remember
like,
that.
"Oh, people are going to
Yeah.
steal your stuff." I'm like, "Do you live in fear all the time?" And, and then people would say, that I shouldn't be sharing my techniques. I'm like, "Why not? We're here to create and share." And then, of course, I got all the post processing hate. So I would do all these things that were totally unconventional. But of course, lovely people like you and millions of others came there and they all got their own set of tools. They got to see a different way of doing
Yeah.
thing. And I don't care if they adopt I don't really have a formula. I have many formulas, but they can copy me 100%, or they can go use a few chunks of what I know. Just like
Yeah.
maybe when you get into spirituality or like even pot making, you may go learn pot making, ceramics from 3 different teachers. And you might steal 100% from one, or you might get like 60% from one, 20 from another, 20 from another. You start doing that, and then you start to become 100% your own. And so I thought like,
Mhm.
and all tutorials out there were hardly any at the time. Now it's a very different world now. Things change quickly. Now it's awesome. You can jump on YouTube and you can like learn anything from, like, I'm not very handy at all with my car, but I can flip on there and learn how to do anything, any kind of tutorial. But back then it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And it just seemed natural and obvious to me.
Yeah. So then how long did it take for your photography work to become basically your livelihood or your daily job, I guess you can say, because you've been doing that for quite some time now. You still do it, right? I mean, I know there's you're writing books and so forth in a kind of a different realm. I mean, not really different. It's all connected. I can see that, but just for argument's sake, the next chapter of your physical life here, let's say. Um, yeah, what did that look like? Like, how long have you been doing that? How long did it take to get to this point of being able to rely on photography to live, I guess you could say?
Yes, good question. Because it, making a living off photography can be very difficult. And I know so many amazing photographers that I could just uh, easily, rationally, and logically argue that are better than me, that produce more interesting work. And I am, there's so many good photographers. I mean, you just get on Instagram and just flip through there. So there's just stunner after stunner after stunner from people I've never even heard of.
Mhm.
Some young woman in her 20s in Slovakia, or a young guy in a country you never heard of. And you look at their photos and they're like, these are amazing. So quality of photos doesn't really matter. I think it's kind of how you uh, brand yourself in an authentic way, right?
Yeah.
I've always thought of photography or any art form, any source of creativity as a vehicle for finding yourself. And it may take many, many years or a decade. Like when I was getting started, I went to Iceland for 4 summers in a row, and I would just walk around the countryside with my camera and listen to music, and I was being very present, and I wasn't worried about the past or concerned about the future. I was just hyper present, which of course is one of the spiritual studies of meditation and things like that. And I wasn't even into any of that stuff back then. But then I started to discover Eckhart Tolle and Michael Singer and so many other things that they put like an intellectual scaffolding around what I was already going through.
Yeah.
So when I started sharing my work, of course, it had a unique style, which was nice. And I would put it all on Flickr. And when I was talking about gaming the system, what I would do is, you go search for something like, I don't know, Angkor Wat, right? And you would see like the 100 best photos of Angkor Wat. And their algorithms seem to be based on like views, likes, and comments, right? Some cocktail of those things. And then so I would set up a little friendly competition with myself. It's like, I'm going to go to Angkor Wat, Cambodia, and I want my photo to be number one, you know, not for ego reasons, just like, yeah, let's see if we can do better than all these things. So they were great photos. And so I kind of set up a
Mhm.
little playful competition in my mind. And I don't think it's any different than like, let's say you're getting together with two friends. So there's three of you and you're trying to bake cakes, like bake a beautiful cake, and you're all having a friendly competition to see who can make the most beautiful cake.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you look at everyone's cake and you actually, have a bit of compersion. You get joy from other people's joy and you can really appreciate other people's handiwork. So then what I would do to kind of game the system on Flickr is I would go look at all these pictures and I would look at who left the longest comments, right? Because I figure the people that leave the super long comments, these are people with a lot of spare time. And I
Yeah.
would go to their portfolio and oftentimes they would have a few photos that were quite good. And I would leave them a lengthy comment. And they were like, oh, who's this Trey guy? Go check out his work. And then they would come to my site and they would leave long comments.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
started to collect all these people that would just write these tomes under, and I would read all of them. Like,
Yeah.
and then so that kind of got my photos up the algorithm or whatever. And yeah, I always kind of come at things sideways like that. So that was fun. But you're talking more about the business side. So the the blog started to make a good amount of money because back then it was all affiliate links. So if there was a tool I
Yeah.
really liked, like Photomatics, which was like $100, I would link to it. And then so people would still pay the same amount. People know how affiliate works. They still pay $100, but I might get $15.
Yeah.
And then other tools, like there used to be all these noise reduction tools and all this other stuff. And this was stuff that I actually used. So I wasn't just all these idiotic influencers at Instagram. Like you get some hot hoochie with a butt that's so big. Like butt's that
Yeah.
big. I don't get it. But they would have like this tea. Like this tea will make you so skinny and amazing. I'm like, what are you hawking? It's just so inauthentic.
Yeah.
You never see,
Speaking of post-processing, it's like happening in real
yeah.
life real life.
You'll never see me in a thong, selling tea at a San Tropez. The odds are low. If you see me doing that, I've hit rock bottom. Um,
Yeah.
and then anyway, and I was like living off the blog and sharing my experiences and making videos and all that stuff. And that was really nice because I was sort of like an author, really. If you write a blog post every
Yeah.
day, and I think now I'm up to like 7,000 blog posts, it's a little bit like writing for a magazine or writing for the New York Times or whatever, and you kind of get a steady paycheck. Although I'm my own boss, so my paycheck would come through ostensibly ads that I'm putting in there of stuff I promote. So it seemed very natural and in the flow, and I was never forcing anything. And then so that started to die down right when my fine art sale started to go up. And yeah, we
Okay.
ended up with a number of collectors. You mentioned a few. We always get new ones. I mean, the big names are the celebrities and stuff like that people know. In fact, I just had Hans Zimmer. He wants to buy a print, so he's picking it out right now. But we have a lot of private
Mm.
collectors too. And we decided to go with a pretty high price points. Like I only sell 3 prints from series one, and I just picked 21. Even though I've got tens of thousands of photos, I picked 21 of my favorites. We did three and they're sold out. And we priced them quite high. Like the first two are 75,000 USD. And then the last one, the last seat on the plane is 95,000. So after that, they're sold out.
Okay.
And so collectors, they think a little differently, these serious collectors. There's a great book called The $16 Million Stuffed Shark that explains this phenomenon is that so they'll buy this print, they'll hang it
Okay.
in their home, and they'll have their friends over. And wealthy people like to give each other art tours because that's the only way uber wealthy people, all of whom I met are wonderful. I know there's this weird, like, anti-millionaire, anti-billionaire thing, like they're greedy and they steal everything. That's not true. Some of these are the most lovely people in the world. Anyway, they all have multiple cars, multiple yachts, multiple Lear jets. So they can't differentiate each other on that stuff. And not that they're trying to outdo each other, but one thing that they do all have is unique art collections. So they have
Yeah.
these fab dinner parties and their friends come over and they always take them on an art tour. And they go, oh, let's just a new artist, even though I feel quite old sometimes. Actually, I feel very young. But anyway, to them, I'm because most of the art they
Yeah.
collect is like from people in their, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, or dead people.
Or dead people.
They
Yeah.
go, oh,
Yeah.
this is a Trey Ratcliff. And they go, who's that? And then, I know these guys. So they tell a little story about me. And then, so they may hang it on their wall for a few years and then they can resell it to other friends for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they get to enjoy the art on their wall for a while and they sell it and then they make maybe a couple hundred K and then they come back and they buy more, hopefully.
Wow.
So it's a very different kind of system than most photographers do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Trying to get in a gallery or making your own gallery or selling online or going to a farmer's market and all that stuff is fine. I just kind of went a little bit of a different route, which ended up working.
Hmm. Well, I imagine too, it must give, everyone's different, but it must give you some, well, financial runway freedom to like, that's your setup, that you've got buyers for your work, and then it, like, frees up more creative capacity, I think, because if you're not worrying about, like, the business all the time, and I'm projecting here, maybe you are, and there's different things I'm not seeing, but if you know that you've got, you know, prints that are gonna go or photographs that are gonna sell, that are gonna obviously cover your living expenses and so forth, then, creating from that place as well, like, just, giving some freedom to just experiment and try different things. It's gotta be a nice setup.
Yeah, I'm full of gratitude for everything in my life, and I'm not greedy at all. I'm actually I have quite a Zen minimalist lifestyle. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not into like cars or uh, fancy travel or anything. If I end up with a great partner like a Ritz Carlton, of course I'll say yes. But I'm also happy like
Yeah.
camping out and sleeping on a park bench or staying in a youth hostel in a place I've never been or whatever. I'm super chill about that stuff. We did launch a series two of 21 more works that are more accessible. They're much lower price points and they're also
Okay.
normal sized. Like a lot of the things with series one, they're huge. They can be like 3 meters or 9, 10 feet across. Not everyone has walls for that. So we made another series for more of like a mid-level, more accessible kind of buyer. And it's not like,
Yeah.
you know, selling dozens a week or anything, but all my money goes to the kids and family and stuff like that. And I have enough to get by on. It's me and my son living here in New
Yeah.
Zealand. And yeah, it makes it easier. And
Yeah.
I do think about this a lot because I don't even advise my model to other photographers or other artists because it seems to be somewhat unique. But like you take a wedding photographer, right? And there's many types of wedding photographers, and I'm not pretending to be an expert on wedding photographers. but you only have so many cycles per week. So when you're not taking photos of a wedding or post processing or sending them off to Indonesia to post
Mhm.
process or whatever they do, um, then you're spending more cycles finding new clients and booking new clients. And then you just have a few cycles left over to do whatever you want to do. Maybe you're not interested. Maybe some
Yeah.
wedding photographers love it. They get really into the couple and it just, they get really into it. Which is always a little weird to,
It's
yeah,
hardcore.
but it's lovely. It is great. And if I had a
Yeah.
wedding photographer, I'd want them to be like this, over the top, flamboyant wedding photographer that gets really into it. But a lot of them, they want to do something else. Maybe they want to shoot landscapes, or they're into like flowers, or they like taking photos of animals. And so when you're in this cycle of constantly new clients, it kind of diminishes your ability to do other projects that you might like. However, I do think that's actually a
Yeah.
good model because then you get to keep feeding the machine. Whereas if you're like me, you just kind of have to wait for the next random person to email you. And I'm not pushy at all. I don't like being like that or being super salesy. I probably could be a little bit more like that. Email all my collectors and say, "Hey, we've got some new stuff coming out. Why don't you share it with your friends?" I just kind of really wait on the universe.
Yeah. But there's something like I mean, I can resonate with that because even like when I first started first met you, I guess digitally, I'll say, and then I did meet you at one of your Ritz Carlton events in Toronto. That was a whole other area of my life too. I was in a corporate job and was kind of doing photography as a hobby, in these landscapes and so forth, and using some of your techniques. And then eventually started actually exploring whether I could, leave the corporate
Yes.
career and make this like a job. And I actually did some. My wife was helping me as well. Did some weekends, some wedding photography, and like that is hardcore. I'll never forget being in like the back seat. She's driving to the next location. I'm swapping out memory cards, trying to back stuff up on the way. I'm like, this is stressful stuff. And just getting to this point of actually, I want photography to be something that is like really lights me up. Like it started to feel like a job. And so I didn't go down that route, but now I'm on kind of a different path of doing mental fitness work and the show and so forth. And it's just been like when you can start to release some of the mental clutter and like really hear the signs and flow and like operate in a way that feels intuitive versus what you're saying, like, a lot of people would say, "Oh, you should do this, should do that." Just beautiful opportunities open up, right? Especially in this entrepreneurial world. It's like, no, no, no. There's everyone has like their recipe of you should be hustling this, you should be grinding for this client. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's not for everyone. Some people, yeah, sure, they like that, but there's a lightness, I guess, I think, or a lighter way to do it. And it sounds like you're taking that approach as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always the hardcore Gary V model, like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
that's what you gotta go
exactly.
get him." It's like this real type A capitalist
Yeah,
kinda thing, right? And I think that is a fictional system. It's not a bad fictional system, you know? I could argue the communist
yeah.
fictional system as much the capitalist one is better than the communist one or the Marxist one but these are all just like rule systems that are someone else made up. And you could be a happy and fulfilled person with very, very little. And I think
Mhm.
people, maybe especially in the US, and I'm not anti US at all, but you do get stuck in this materialistic consumerist system, where, maybe you can afford to get a bigger loan for a bigger house and then you have an extra room and you can get furniture for it. Like it's just one thing after another. And or everyone else at your school has
Yeah,
like a SUV that's newer than 5 years old. So man, I should get a new SUV. It's just like there's a soft kind of mind virus in a way that is poisonous. And where really, if you just declutter your mind, and obviously you know a lot about uh, mental fitness and mental acuity, the more simple your life is, the more mind space you have, and the more you can really listen to your intuition. Like, I know your
yeah.
spirit guides are around you all the time, your guardian angel, your higher self, your soul council. Like there's a whole team of beings around you. And we're kind of the tip of the
Yeah.
spear down here on it.
Yeah.
And the less cluttered we are, the more we can listen to our higher self that sees everything that's going on. And then you can really listen to your intuition. And your intuition in a lot of ways is the same as your higher self. From everything I've read and what I've experienced when I went to the other side, well, before we choose to come down here on Earth, right? I think we've been on many, many missions here before. And every time we come down, they say this is the hardest school in the universe where we get to learn the most lessons down here in this 3D density, right? And maybe this
Mm.
time down here, we're here to overcome greed or anger or fear, which is the biggest one of all. That's the one where all the other negative human emotions come from. If you get over
Yeah.
all that, then it's finally your last time around the cycle. But when you sign up to come down here, you actually sit there with your guardian angels and your spirit guide, who's like your coach, who's like your Tony Robbins. He just loves you, been with you on every line.
They clap
Yeah,
like this?
they do. And I actually like Tony Robbins. I think he's pretty great. Yeah,
Yeah, so do I.
and so,
Yeah.
um, and your whole spirit council, you're kind of like a high tech boardroom of sorts, and like you lay out your whole life like on this boardroom table, right? You see, okay, here I'm born, and then here something traumatic happens to me at age 5, and then here I get my first girlfriend at age like 14 or whatever. Like you have these major moments, or at this point, my parents get divorced. And so there's moments that are going to happen in your life that will test you and get you over some of these things that you're coming down here to learn. You still have free will, but you have these major events that hit you, right? And then your higher self and your whole team's up there, they're just eating popcorn. They're like, how's Mark going to react to this? How's Trey going to react to this? Is he going to react to it with like love and understanding and empathy? Or is he going to
Yeah.
create fear and anger and create more conflict and try to control? And so I think this is something that helps my mental gymnastics is that I don't try to control hardly anything. I just allow. Where I
Yeah.
can kind of massage things, and because so I am smart and clever about some things, I know a better way to do things, so I kind of shift them in that direction. But I wouldn't call it controlling or forcing. It's just being super mentally alert and very aware of the environment, which could be anything from objects to people to anything. And then when your spidey sense is on and your spidey tingles are happening, then you just kind of see an easy path forward. You don't have to force anything. And we all know when we try to force things and they don't work, you just get extra frustrated. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
because you have this set of expectations in your head, which is really just a fictional creation that you came up with.
Mhm. It's fascinating. So we need to jump into the Scotland moment just to so people know where some of this stuff's coming from. But right before that, like just in what you just said, because I think I shared in our email exchange that I'm working on this second book and it's around between self. So I'm studying and I'm using AI to do this right now, but I'm having almost like exact interview conversations like what we're doing right now, but I'm doing it with all of these ancient teachers from Eastern traditions, Western, Buddhism, all these different modalities and just kind of getting their counsel on based on especially people that have been written about a lot and there's enough to kind of crawl the internet, but it all comes back to essentially what you're saying, like letting go of control. And we are not, we are not, we get hung up on our identity and it's not even saying the word between selves, there is no self, and so forth. And so I'm trying to bridge the gap because I mean, I think as a society, we're pretty far from accepting that or being okay. So there needs to be a bit of a bridge there to help. But it all comes back to what you're saying, across, like, every tradition that I think we see out there.
Yes, there is incredible consistency. And if you go back to really the origins of all religions, they all come from that same source too. It's completely been
Yeah,
bastardized by modern religions,
yeah,
and they came up with all
yeah.
this nonsense to scare people and to control people.
Yeah.
And pretty much all of them created some kind of weird patriarchal control system. If you go back to the source materials, it looks like there were 12 male disciples and 12 female disciples for Jesus, which conveniently got cut out of the
Yeah.
system. And one of my favorite, I wouldn't really call her a spiritual author, but is Dolores Cannon. And I have a list of all kinds of spiritual
Okay.
books on my site. And she has a couple books about Jesus. She's written like 18 books. She is a past life regressionist, and she goes into people's past lives and they talk about it from their own perspective while they're under hypnosis. And they'll talk about anything
Wow.
from, 3,000 years ago. These are people that have no interest in history, or maybe even ancient Egypt or whatever. And they're just like accountants and secretaries or bankers. But then they
Hmm.
talk in detail about what they're wearing, what they're doing, how they're interacting, stuff that's happening politically. Anyway, she has a few about people that actually like walked with Jesus and the incredible like detail that they go through as they go through like leper colonies and as they go to new villages and the government's kind of after them and this, but like the detail, like the detail of the caves they're going to and everything has ancient names, and then the author, Dolores, actually looks them up and sees their real places. But anyway, so, you know, even when Jesus was alive, apparently he didn't even want a religion founded on him. He didn't want a church. He didn't want formalized anything. He just wanted people to love each other and follow the golden rule and help each other. That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
religion has really fucked up a lot of people and created unnecessary
Oh
fear.
yeah.
And yeah, I guess going to your question about what happened to me in Scotland, and that was about 2 years ago, happened to be on the night of my birthday,
Yeah.
and this is after about 10 years of psychedelic use, okay? I didn't do any
Yeah.
drugs or even drink any alcohol till I was 40, and then I made up for lost time very quickly. Started to go to Burning Man, I started hanging out with artists and musicians and bohemians and all kinds of people. And then I started to get into, acid and mushrooms and go on these spiritual journeys. A lot of people that aren't into this scene think that people just do drugs to get fucked up and to escape from them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
wrong. These are other people that have chosen to believe a lie because it sounds convenient and they like to make themselves feel superior to others. But really, you're not looking externally for any answers. These are molecules that help you go inside on your own spiritual journey. And you're like, oh, it could be very healing and wonderful. And then now I've done like 7
Yeah.
ayahuascas, ibogaine, done the crystallized poison of the Sonoran desert toad in the form of
Mm.
5-MeO-DMT, and so I've pretty much done everything. And again, non-drug users think everything is heroin and crack. That's wrong. I've never tried heroin and crack.
Yeah.
They'd probably be pretty good,
Yeah.
but again, those are people that usually often have shitty lives, maybe in different, um, you know, life
Yeah.
situations.
They're in level 1 of the,
Right.
the coming back to Earth to play the game.
So I already knew there was something else, and I've, seen and encountered
Okay.
entities in these situations, and I'm like, "Wow, okay, there's something there." But then when I was in Scotland, almost exactly 2 years ago, birthday is 7/7, July 7th,
Mm.
and I had just spent a month in Scotland, hiking around, taking lots of photos, carrying all my stuff. You know what it's like. You gotta be in pretty good physical condition to do all that stuff. And I was super healthy, never had any heart problems, and I had a near death experience around midnight on the night of my birthday, which I never used to give any kind of astrological importance to. In fact, I thought all that stuff was just nonsense, but no longer. So I was standing in front of my bed, okay, and no drugs, not drinking, nothing. And I had my laptop in my hand, standing up there. And I was about to go down to the bar and get some water and work on photos because I had this tiny little room. And sometimes it's nice to get out of the room and work on photos, watch people
Yeah.
walk by on the streets of Edinburgh. Anyways, looking at these 2 photos above my bed, and my near death experience is as far as I can tell, incredibly unique. And not that I need it to be unique, but I've since studied hundreds and hundreds, probably almost 1,000 near death experiences. And while there is a lot of Venn diagram overlap, the way I got into mine seems unique because most of those involve like a medical emergency, like you're in a car
Yeah, yeah.
crash or a heart attack. You're surrounded by surgeons with the paddles of life or whatever. This wasn't me. I was perfectly healthy. And I looked at these two pictures above my bed, and I just spent the whole month in Scotland having unusual dreams, and I was very drawn to the land. I saw these connections between Scotland and New Zealand, and I wasn't really having any mystical or super spiritual experiences, but I felt a nice vibe going on. So the two pictures above the bed, which were quite nice photos, one was these rocks on the coast of northern Scotland where I just was, and another was a sheep, a picture of a ram, like a male sheep. And I looked at these pictures, I started making connections between those pictures and my life here in New Zealand. And then, Mark, I'm not kidding you, automatically, I just said these 24 magical words, totally involuntarily. They just flew out of my mouth. And I don't remember what they were. They were all jammed together. I don't know if it's 24. It might have been
Yeah.
20, might have been 30. But it's like Angelo Stuffalo, kind of, and then I just like blew it all out. And then I fell face first on the bed. It's
Yeah.
something about when I said those words was familiar to me. Like I said them, I remember saying them as like maybe a little boy in my room, or maybe when I came into this world. I don't know.
Oh.
But as soon as I didn't have a chance to put out my hands to catch myself. I just splat on my glasses, and my soul shot up out of my body. And again, I've tried pretty much every psychedelic. This was nothing like that. This was real. I had done this before. I was flying through space. I was carefree. It was like MDMA or ecstasy times a million. You can't even believe it. I was free of my meat sack, which I love my body. And,
Yeah.
I give it love every day. And your body likes it when you love it. But I was happy to be rid of it. I was like, oh my gosh, that was quite an
Yeah.
experience. And so I'm flying through space. I'm like, whoa, where am I going? What's next? This is awesome. It felt so familiar. And then I started to go into the tunnel, right? You often hear this. My tunnel was a little unique. Mine had a big rectangle at the end and with these rainbow colored lights coming through. I was like, whoa. And so I'm kind of going down this tunnel. And as I'm going down this tunnel, I have this full understanding of myself, of all my other selves, about what happened on Earth and all my friends and relations and all that stuff. I was like, oh, I get it. Like, it makes so sense.
Like instantly,
Yeah.
right?
Like, I had access to my full
Wow.
soul, like 100% of my intelligence.
Yeah.
Down here, we got like maybe, I don't know, 5 or 8%. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
get it. Now, unfortunately, I don't remember what it was now, but I remember that feeling. Um, and then
Mm.
I go through this big door and I'm in this arena. It's like a Colosseum in Rome. I felt like Gladiator, Maximus returning to the Colosseum. And the seats were like full of all these souls that I've been on many missions to Earth here before, you know, loved ones and relatives, friends, and they're all like cheering for me and love bombing me. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And I was like,
Did they look like people like what we see, or they look something
no, they was
different?
just like light bodies, like rainbow bodies. But I
Okay.
could kind of sense who they were, right? But I didn't spend a lot of
Yeah.
time more.
You should have taken a
I
photo,
know.
Trey.
Where's my
Just can I set the
I
tripod
know,
up?
where was my nine-dimensional camera? And so,
Yeah.
and then also when I was in there and I was surrounded, I felt like I had just completed Mission Planet Earth. And I remember this
Mm.
specifically. And I came back with all of my failures and successes and all the food that I tasted and the feeling of grass between my toes and all of this stuff that they can't experience up there, but I can share it with them. And like all of my philosophical insights and like I had actually
Yeah.
contributed to the human race in some way, maybe through art or just by being kind and loving or whatever. I don't know. And so I hung out there for a while and it was just incredible. And I was ready for what was next. And then they sent me back into my body. And I was like, no,
So
don't send me back to Earth. And they were like, there's more for you to do down there. They neglected to tell me what it was,
Okay.
and I've since have had many interactions with the great beyond and visions and alien surgeries and all kinds of stuff. And anyway, when I came back to Earth, um, I was super confused. Um, s-
Oh, I can't
yeah, I got
imagine.
such a massive download. It was almost overwhelming to my mind. It was overwhelming to my mind. And I remember coming back and sitting up in bed there in Scotland and thinking that was the most transformative, transcendent moment of my life by far. I mean, and, I've had three beautiful kids, like you have two kids. They're at their childbirth,
Mhm.
falling in love with Tina, getting married. Like you have these magical moments in life, even though a lot of life kind of sucks and stuff, but you still have these magical moments. And those are very special to me, of course, but take all of those, combine them, and multiply them by hundreds of thousands. And that's what happened up there. That was my true home.
Yeah.
So then
How long were you out? Do you
I
know,
was probably
Trey?
out. No, time is different up there. I don't know because I didn't really look at the watch. Good
Mm,
30, 45 minutes. I don't think it was over an hour though. And then for that 6 months after I got back and came back to New Zealand and I had all the other kinds of stuff going on, I was super confused. And then one of my friends, Emily, came over to here to stay for Christmas and she brought me a book. And I hadn't read a paperback book in years. I'm more of a Kindle audiobook guy. I do love paperback books. It just so happens because I go on hikes 2, 3 hours a day. And I like audiobooks. But anyway, so I started looking at this paper
yeah.
book and it was called Journey of Souls, The Life Between Lives by Dr. Michael Newton. I was
Mm,
like, this sounds interesting. So I just started reading it. And in there's like 30, 40 case studies. Uh, he would hypnotize people, like, go back to their last death. They would die and they would go to the place that I went to. And it's what happens after you die and before you're born. And I was like, this is exactly what I saw. Now, I didn't go through the whole process, but like everything from what it's like flying through space, how you're greeted by souls. The next step is like a soul or a life review with your mentor. Watch like a
mhm.
whole Netflix documentary of your life, right? In 3D.
Like the ultimate New Year's prep,
Right.
you know?
And then you kinda like there's an old movie called Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, where you're like, "Why did you make this decision here? Why did you" and you're like, "Oh, face plants, like, I
Yeah.
could have made a better decision there." Maybe every time you accidentally or purposely, hurt somebody, when you're watching this documentary, you go in to that person and you can experience what they felt from their point of view. You're like, "Oh, I see." It gives you, like,
Oh,
real empathy and sympathy. Again, there's no judgment, there's no hell, there's just love. There's just
just
understanding
love, yeah.
of, like, areas for improvement in case you choose to go back to Earth. And then you've got lots of free time up there, there's creativity, there's schools like Hogwarts, you can go off with your friends to, like, other planets, there's pleasure planets, there's water planets where you swim with dolphins and whales, there's creativity planets, there's just all kinds of stuff going on up there, and you can stay up there as long as you want to. And then at some point, your spirit guide, your ethereal Tony Robbins comes up to you and says, "Hey, Mark, don't you think it's time to go back to Earth? You got a few more things to work on, or you got some karma to pay back, or you have other souls that are in your soul family that need you." You're like, "Oh, okay, I'll go down." You go to this
Mhm.
thing that, again, these are many people from all around the world in many walks of life that aren't even interested. They might be atheist. They come from many religions, but they all say the same thing. You go to this thing called the Ring of Destiny, which is such a cool name. You're there with your soul guide and your council, all of whom just want the best for you. And you get to choose from like 3 or 4 different bodies, right? Male, female, different races. You mix it up every time you come down. Although they say 75% of the time you choose the same sex. And they all have different lives. So it's almost like seeing a movie preview of your life. Like, yes, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to have that life. And these are the lessons I'm going to learn. And these are the major actors that are come into my life. And these are the contracts that we have with each other. And these are the lessons I'm going to learn. These are the lessons that hopefully they learn. And you often switch roles. Like sometimes your brother might be your dad, or your sister might be like a wife from, three incarnations ago, and whatever. And then
Mhm.
so you're like, okay, this is what I choose. And then you go back to your soul buddies, your soul family. They've all chosen different lives. They're going to be born in different countries to different families, perhaps. And then you all figure out how you're going to find each other down here on Earth amongst the billions of people. Because you know as well as I do that you meet thousands and thousands of people, but there's certain people you latch onto. And it doesn't have to be in a
Yeah.
romantic way or anything. Just like we need to be friends. We have some kind of mission to do, or we have something to clear with each other. And they're all
Yeah.
watching from above. Like I said, just eating popcorn, like, oh, this is great. And they're so proud of us.
Yeah, they did
Our
it.
children,
Yeah.
we're like their children down here, like learning. And whenever they see us in moments of happiness and harmony, or hugging a tree, or giving a horse an apple, or playing with a dog or kitty, they're like, "Oh, it's so sweet." And as we clear karma, um, and we become more loving and harmonious and let go of fear, they're probably like, "Finally, how many times has this guy got to go to Earth before he figures this shit
Yeah.
out?" Because we've been showing him the whole time, but he's been resisting, or
Yeah.
controlling, or letting the darker aspects of human nature um, affect his life, and the life of other people's in a negative way.
I mean, I have I have so many questions. I'm trying to keep it, I guess, as practical for people listening as possible because e though, probably many of us can't relate to the entirety of your experience, and there obviously you found, many case studies that explain, like, you're not the only one, obviously. I think there are versions of what you're experiencing that we experience, like, as big moments in life, whether that's a psychedelic guided experience or some people get it in meditation, or you have big moments in life where, like, it really you you learn some things or some wisdom is passed down. But I'm curious, like, because usually the thing that we struggle with most is, like, how do you integrate that newfound knowledge? So like, for you, when you come back, where do you even begin? I know you said you felt really confused, and I know there was some time, like a period there where it was tough, right? Like, 'cause it's got to be. It's not like you can be like, "Hey, friend, so let's talk about this shared experience." I mean, it's not one of those scenarios.
Yeah, how do you integrate this stuff into your life when you have some kind of a philosophical or spiritual breakthrough? And I don't think you need to die or necessarily have a high mushroom dose or go to ayahuasca in order to have spiritual insights. I think everybody has spiritual and intellectual
Yeah,
and philosophical insights. And I think when you have these things, or when you're gifted them, your
yeah,
intuition, which is really your higher self, just gifting you these little things. They slowly bleed in over time. Sometimes it's not a giant eureka moment. Sometimes it's like, a frog boiling in its own spiritual water. Good
mhm,
analogy in this case. And when you understand something at a fundamental core level, it's kind of immediately integrated. You may fight it a little bit because it goes against rules you've been taught, or a system you've been co opted to your entire life. But when the truth has a certain ring to it, and a pretty good analogy is there was it's not the perfect analogy, but it's all right. There's a time when everyone thought the world was flat. There's a few people that still
yeah,
think that. But and then, astronomers, they were like, no, we were wrong. The earth is actually a sphere, right? And then when people would reflect on this and they would look at the evidence, they would look at the shadows on obelisks and stuff. I think that's how they first figured it out, at the same time of the day. They would be like, "Oh, okay, the Earth isn't flat; it's a sphere. Isn't that interesting?" So if I keep going in one direction, if I keep following this set of stars or whatever, I keep following this one star all around the world, then I'll end up at the same place. Now, that doesn't actually change your life that much, but it awakens you in a way. You're like, "Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting." And it makes you
yeah,
understand the nature of reality in a different way. Now, not everybody is interested in reality as I am. Uh, I guess a lot of people are just struggling to keep their head above water, which reminds me of this beautiful Hopi poem that I will link you to. Is, if you're when you're struggling on a river, and just trying to keep your head above water, you're grabbing onto roots and vines on the side, and there's another way of just letting go and floating down the river and
Yeah, flowing. Yeah.
appreciating the river for what it is. Yeah, and it kind of gets back to that controlling and allowing thing. So
But that's where I feel like I've felt that reading your book in I mean, everyone's on a different journey and doing different things. Obviously, for me personally, though, there's just been working on these different creative projects and people kind of coming into my life that I guess to use some of your language, like just intuitively felt like there was something there that's been different in like, oh yeah, I'm meant to do this work with these people and deliver this message. And I'm still kind of traveling down that path, like, it's not completely there yet, and I've found as I've been reading your book, like, there's a level of comfort in hearing what you're sharing that it's just like a higher wisdom or trust, I guess you can say. Like, it lightens the situation, and especially as much as I agree with you, I mean, religion has morphed into like, a lot of crazy things, but I think what it's done in the past is given people, like, some level of higher belief, right? Especially when times get tough, and as more and more people just don't subscribe to really any religion, it feels like we're living in a bit of a dumpster fire here on Earth, like, the amount of fear and stress and conflict and craziness going on. um, I just found reading what you're teaching sharing, I guess, from your journey, was so comforting. Around like, okay, there's a higher purpose here. There's something else going on. And like, I want to be part of that new earth, you know?
yeah, the new Earth is it's already kind of underway, and I'll share with you a really cool video. It's from After School with a K.
Okay.
It's about a transition from 3D to the 5D Earth, and it's a beautiful video, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think people that know a little bit about this stuff, they already be on this wavelength. And I won't go too far
Okay.
into it, but yeah, basically what you talked about is, and this is not any kind of spiritual elitism or judgment or anything, but I think the more you hang out with high vibrational people, the higher vibration you
Yeah.
become. I think there's the old adage a
Yeah.
lot of people that have heard of is the five people you hang out with the most, you become sort of an average of those five people. And then if you're doing your own spiritual studies or your own just walks in nature or your own creativity, you are probably raising your own vibration on your own. And again, this is not judgmental, but in some ways, you may outgrow some of your friends, right? And they
Oh
may
yeah,
just
for
kind
sure.
of move into the background. Maybe you contact them a little less and they contact you a little less. And there's nothing to feel bad because that's sort of a natural transition. And it doesn't say they're not going to make it. It's just that people gain vibrations at different times, right? And they're somewhere on their path. And no matter, like maybe at the top of the path, is like a Buddha. And maybe you're somewhere up
Yeah.
that path and you see other people. There's no judgment or anything. They're just on their journey, just like we were on our journey. I'm a way different dude than I was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or even 10 years, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you are too as you go through this stuff. And like imagine where we'll be 10 years from now. And then new people come into your life. That's all part of the plan, you know? Um, because these new
Yeah.
people that come into your life, maybe you have some kind of mission together that you need to work on or a project or be what they call like a light bringer or a way shower. And we're the ones that are, you talk a lot about, mental health and mental stability, being emotionally mature and emotionally stable and aware and empathetic. But yeah, you're grounded. So when there's chaotic things going on in the world, and there are, and there's going to be more coming,
Yeah.
I think, as we go through this transition to the new earth. I often equate it
Mm.
to like a mother giving birth. There's a lot of pain and screaming and crying, but then a new life comes out of it. And if you believe that the earth is a superorganism, sentient creature, which is quite feminine and maternal in many ways, it is going through this birthing process of a new earth as there's this kind of mitosis happening where there's the old one that's full
Yeah.
of fear and anger and greed and materialism and too much tech. There's nothing wrong with tech. But then there's the new one where people are loving and harmonious and there's a balance of tech and nature and AI to help us figure out stuff that our brains can't quite figure out and things are going to be fine. There's this beautiful mitosis happening, so as we raise our vibration, we start to notice different things. And if you and
Mm,
synchronicities, the more you're in the flow, the more synchronicities you see. And it's wild
yeah.
sometimes. If you know about math and statistics, the odds of these certain things happening at the same time or you noticing things is almost statistically impossible. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
happening and the universe gives you clues when you're in the flow. And that's why, again, I equate it to a game. You see little Easter eggs or things just seem easier. How life seems to be easy for some people. Well, there's a reason for it. You're not
Yeah.
lucky. It requires a
Yeah.
lot of hard
Well,
work, like
honest
as you know.
well, honestly, I see, and this is why I reached out to you right away. Like, I see it was too much of a coincidence for, I mean, I'm subscribed to your emails, obviously, for years now at this point, but I came across, it was somewhere else where I saw you were sharing a video about, or maybe it was in your last email, newsletter, where you were sharing a video explaining the Scotland situation, and it came just as I was starting to do this book research, or really, like, taking it from idea to, "I'm gonna start working on this now." And I just found it too, like I said, with knowing you in the photography world so many years back, and, like, every day looking at your photographs and so forth, and all of a sudden at that time, I'm presented with what you're describing now in this journey, and immediately bought the book, and, like, this is fascinating. So it's I feel it by myself.
Well, thanks. That's sweet of you to say. Yeah, no, I was just compelled to write it, you know, and I think, even if, it only helps 10 people, that's fine. I think a lot of us that are interested in this new evolving world, it's kind of one of our side missions to help be bridges. I think you said that earlier for your new book you're working on. That what's it called? The self between selves. Yeah,
Between
between
selves.
selves.
Yeah.
Is that we're here in all humility to help build a bridge for people that are curious about a better way of life, a more mentally stable, aware, and loving way of life. And we can help build the bridge because we're all building the bridge together and we've crossed it. And
Yeah.
maybe a few things we say here and there, they're like light codes that awaken stuff inside of you. Buried in our DNA, they say there's a lot of junk DNA in there. It's not junk DNA. It's a lot of it is the entire history of mankind, and it's incredibly complicated. And there's just, let's say, dormant parts of our DNA that often get reawakened by what you read or experience in nature or what someone else says. You're like, oh, that makes sense. And yeah, we haven't lost people so far. Maybe this could lose them. But, a long time ago, we did used to have all kinds of psychic abilities. I don't appear to have any right now, but everything from, telepathy to telekinesis and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. And they're in there. And I think they will be slowly reawakened. There are certain healers in the world that I've experienced that can actually like see auras, they can see light. There's all kinds of Reiki energy healers, which I used to think is nonsense. I don't anymore. There's certain people with these abilities
Yeah.
that are turned on. And actually, there's this amazing podcast I'll recommend to the skeptics out there, which of course I used to be one.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the telepathy tapes?
I just heard, yeah, I heard the lady that runs them, or she was interviewed. I can't remember who interviewed her
Yeah,
recently,
her name is Kai.
but I haven't listened to the.
Um,
What's her name?
Kai. Yeah.
Kai.
So
Okay.
it's only 10 episodes, I think, and they're short and they're really easy to listen to. They kind of got that NPR feel to them, where it's kind of interviewee and she goes to locations. But anyway, the point of it is that there are autistic kids, which we all know. And there's more and more autistic kids being
Hmm.
born. And I think these are very special children with different minds and the kind of minds our earth needs for different kinds of thought. Because a lot of the old school thought really isn't seem to be working. But there's a certain
Yeah.
percentage of these autistic kids that are nonverbal, right? They don't speak, they can't speak. And they've discovered a lot of these kids, if not all of them, have telepathy skills. And mothers started to notice that the kids were reading their thoughts. Like they would go in and they'd be thinking like purple backpack. And the kid would write on his little iPad purple backpack. Or they would like recite
Yeah.
numbers like 4931 and the kid would write 4931. It actually did all kinds of scientific testing. And sometimes it's not just the mother, sometimes it's the brother. This one uh, girl was just at home alone, and her brother read the entire Harry Potter series, and she never saw the movies or anything. Yet you can ask her any question about Harry Potter, and she knows the answer. Um, they often go to this place called the Hill every night, where it's kind of like this group chat room where they all communicate with each other and make friends, and they meet in real life, and like it's undeniable. So
Oh
telepathy
yeah.
exists. Like it's scientifically proven.
Yeah.
And if it's able to be in these kids, they basically have the same DNA as us. They just have different genes turned on, and it can happen. And I think it will happen for all of us. Because even though you and I are good with words, it's still a little sloppy. Um,
Yeah.
Getting
Fair.
your real thoughts and feeling your heart through your thoughts, that's the superior way of communication rather than us just like banging on drums and hitting rocks together, which is basically like human language.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah. Okay, Trey. I mean, I obviously can continue for hours with you. I want to respect your time, and maybe we'll have to do a part two, especially when your next book comes out. But is there anything you wish I would have asked you about, or any kind of like parting words, especially I think related to maybe this just encouragement or excitement towards the new earth that is forming. I mean, I know for me that's really motivating.
Yeah, I think it's to be optimistic and don't give up hope. Um, and when you watch the news and all the sensationalism, watch it like it's a movie. I like, I kind of like
Yeah.
disaster movies where you see all the shit's going
Yeah.
on in the world. Like, oh no, those are just movies. You can think of it the same way, and you can still be empathetic and compassionate. But also, you can also look at it like catastrophe porn. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
And also people that die when you come into this earth, just as you choose that how you're going to be born, you choose how you're going to die. Then after you die, you're in a super blissful, loving place. Like it was better
Yeah.
than Earth. It's all you can have
Yeah.
passion for, like there's a tidal wave and whatever millions of people die in Bangladesh or something. You'd be like, oh, that's terrible. But also, those millions of people are free and they knew what they were getting into. They signed up for
Yeah.
this sort of thing. And it's sort of like Malthusian culling of the earth in a way. And
Mhm.
population is going to be massively decreased on Earth over the next. They say even Korea, which has a massive population, in 3 generations, they're only going to have 4% of their current population based on current replacement rates. Something very similar in Japan because birth rates are going down.
Yeah.
So the Earth is about to become massively depopulated through fertility rates, through catastrophes, and all kinds of stuff. So try not to think negatively about it, but that like there is something happening and there's a larger intelligence and wisdom and loving harmony at work. And just focus
Mm.
on your close relations and your own living environment and spend time in nature and you can create your own little heaven on earth. You're still gonna have to be some nonsense you have
Yeah.
to deal with, but that's okay. Uh, yeah, you get
Yeah.
to create the reality in which you want to live in. And if things aren't working for you, you can try to find a way to cut that person or those people or those situations out of your life, because you're actually way in more control of your life than you think you are. The media will scare you that like the government runs your life, or like it's just not true. They have very little impact on your day-to-day activities.
Well, I want to thank you, Trey, for so many things. Of course, making some time to come on this show and have this conversation, for actually being open to sharing your experience and not keeping that just for yourself. I think that is a beautiful thing that you're doing. And then for me personally, yeah, I haven't mentioned this, but I mean, you were obviously a huge reason why I picked up a camera in the first place. And outside of just the photography, let's say skills part of it, the gift that uh, you gave me is the gift of presence. Because I can't. I think you can probably relate to this. I can't walk past any situation where there's beautiful light and not see, a frame or composition, or whether I have a camera or not. And that has just been a beautiful way to operate in the world. And it's just really full circle coming back and having this conversation about all these topics. So thank you.
That's the great gift of photography, is that we notice things that the muggles
Yeah.
the muggles don't see. I'll leave you with this one quick story from Hans Zimmer. Known each other for about 10 years, and I was in his studio and we were just talking about all kinds of stuff. And then he goes, and this is kind of a funny story. He goes, Trey, why are you a great photographer? Which of course is a strange thing to hear from Hans Zimmer. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, he's really putting me on the spot here. And then I kind of just went to my little mind vacuum. I said, I didn't say it. I kind of made it as a question. I said, because I see things other people don't see. And he's like, yes. And then he goes, why am I a great composer? But he said it like in a fun way, not an egotistic. I
Yeah.
said, oh, because you
Yeah.
hear things other people don't hear. He goes, yes. He goes, did you just hear that? I said,
Yeah.
no. He goes, that was the sound of the air conditioner clicking on. He goes, I love that sound.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, now that you discover
It's
photography, you can walk
amazing.
by light and shadows and color. And even without your camera, you'll still appreciate it.
Yeah. It's all there. And yeah, so it's beautiful. And now in this chapter, at least for me, and I imagine many listening, I mean, just this conversation and what we're talking about, just breathes excitement and encouragement and inspiration I think in all our lives, where, like you said, I mean, there's just a lot going on in the world that you can get really sucked into it, that it's like, I just don't have time for that, So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets, with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.